Competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! Players are furious. That's what Farfa said in his new video, and I think that's kind of correct. A lot of people are kind of upset about the format that has been created in this Legacy of Destruction YCS Indianapolis Tier 0 Snake Eye format that is just full of hand traps and zero interaction. It's just not fun. It's not fun to watch. It's not incredibly fun to play, and a lot of people on Twitter, including myself, are going into their national season without a lot of motivation because this format is just kind of rough. But there are a lot of things on the Forbidden and Limited list that Konami could change to make this a little bit better. Some hits to cards and releasing some other cards from the ban list could really help, and this is what this video is about. We're not going to go into too much depth into what Snake Eye's problem is really about, but we're going to fix this format, or at least try to, by predicting what Konami could do in the next Forbidden and Limited list that could be arriving any second now. Sit back, relax, enjoy, like the video, and subscribe if you're new. Let's begin with the first card that Konami can take care of, and that's Snake Eye's Flamberge Dragon. I just want to pull the band-aid. I just want to do it at the start of the video. Snake Eyes need to get hit. What happened in the OCG was that Wanted, Seeker of Sinful Spoils went to 1, and Snake Eyes Ash went to 2. Eventually occurred is that all the gaps of the cards that were taken out of the list were filled with Fiendsmith card. This is a new engine releasing an Infinite Forbidden, and it's very, very good. So if you do the same thing, it's just gonna fill up the same space here when Infinite Forbidden comes out. Infinite Forbidden, by the way, comes out the day of NAWCQ. It's not really gonna change a thing. Do you want to kill the Wanted engine that can grab level 1 fires from the game? Not necessarily. That's pretty good design. It allows a lot of decks to have a good engine that can start their combo without having too much power in their main deck. But where the Snake Eye deck is really unfair is Flamberge. It's just Flamberge. Snake Eye's Ash provides a lot of, advantage, but Flamberge is an interruption. It's an extender that extends for 2 monsters, and it's an end war piece with follow-up. It's everything. You get rid of the Flamberge, and you don't need to hit anything else. I really wanted the Abelstar stuff to stay, so hopefully they just go for the dragon. So Flamberge to 0. Another 2 cards that could go to 0 and could be forbidden if Flamberge doesn't get hit, and I really, really hope they don't do that, is Apollousa and Zelantis. I've been calling for Zelantis to get banned. I think Zelantis is a very toxic card, and without Zelantis, at least the Snake Eye board is a little bit more fragile, and you don't necessarily die on the next turn. That's already a good thing. Zelantis is just responsible for toxic combos that just lock you from summoning. Apollousa, on the other hand, is a card that I think a lot of players really want banned. I'm not one of them. I think extra deck generic tools are fine. Apollousa hasn't been busted up until Snake Eye came and just shits out 5 monsters on the board for free. I don't think this is the approach. I think banning Savage and Baron was sort of like hitting Apollousa. You don't need to do that. Just hit the engine, not the end board piece. Because a lot of decks need Apollousa to be competitive. So while they could ban Apollousa and they could ban World Sea Dragon Zelantis, I do think, regardless of what they do, they should bring back Linkuriboh and Borreload Savage Dragon. Baron de Fleur, I think, is a very strong card. I don't really like the amount of power that card has. 0. Stay banned. But Savage and Linkuriboh, we can see that 1, they didn't really affect the format. It doesn't really change anything. Borreload Savage is a good Omni Negate that can save you from board breakers and hand traps and stuff like that. But still, people didn't really change their decks. Some people are playing Droplet now, and they didn't before, so it's not about the Omni Negates at all. Second, Linkuriboh and Savage hurt a lot of other decks as well. Things like Dinos, Ultra Guys, things like Dragon Link, of course, that has been hit to hell. I think they should consider bringing them back possibly to 3. Especially if Flamberge goes, Linkuriboh and Savage don't need to be banned anymore. The other card is like sort of a Tenpai card, but it's always been that toxic combo deck that is totally ignorant to their extra deck because their deck is so strong. Pot of Prosperity should finally go to 1. I don't really understand why this card is at 3. It's just the stun decks, it's just the toxic decks, it's the Kashtiras, it's the Tenpais, it's even sometimes the Melodious, but probably not Melodious. Just toxic decks. I think that looking 6 cards into your extra deck is very, very powerful. And this is my hottest take, and I don't think it's that hot take, but people are gonna think that it is. Pot of Prosperity is better than Pot of Greed. Get used to it, people. The card is better than Pot of Greed. You get to see 6 cards deep into your extra deck, basically at a free cost, because that cost doesn't really matter if you're playing it, and it creates so much advantage finding the perfect silver bullet to out your opponent's board, or just go first with like a Floodgate, and I think this card needs to be at least at 1. And one of the cards that you could pick up from Prosperity after completing your combo is of course Dimensional Barrier, which should be banned. Ban Deep Barrier doesn't make sense. The card was printed before Links came out, and what happens is that this card can just shut down any Xyz, Synchro, Pendulum, or Fusion strategy. Just like that. You dig it up with Prosperity, or you get it with Thrust, and it just kills an entire deck for a turn. It doesn't necessarily have to be this way. You have cards like Simul Archfiends that are a little bit more balanced. I think they are a little bit more fair. But the fact that Deep Barrier is just agnostic to Links is also really annoying, because Links always control the format in some way, especially now. And while the card is super toxic, it's also not helpful against Links. So I think Deep Barrier definitely should be banned. One other card that I think should be banned is Albion the Sanctifier Dragon. I think that even though, Branded isn't a top deck right now, and I'm gonna say it very carefully because people are gonna call me biased in the comments, Sanctifier could be banned. Expulsion and Sanctifier can create really toxic game states, and while Fluent Reese is not an amazing deck, Barrier Statue of the Stormwinds is still banned. I think it's absolutely fine to ban Albion the Sanctifier Dragon. I think I would be a little bit remiss, and I would prefer to have Gimmick Puppet Nightmare banned, but with the recent support, it's just not gonna happen. Ban Albion. I don't want that stink on my deck. I just want to play nice and cool. Heavy Storm. So many Floodgates, so many backrow. Bring back Heavy Storm. It's at 1 in the OCG. I think it could come back to 1 in the TCG as well. I think with the combination of like 2 Lightning Storm, Heavy Storm, maybe 1 Duster, people will realize it's kind of worth playing that, and I think it's a card that could go back. A card that I think should have been banned a while ago, but now I think it might be the best opportunity to do that, is Bystial Magnamut. Bystial Magnamut should be banned. The card is so good. Searching any dragon in your deck limits design space in terms of, just deck design, in terms of dragon decks. New dragon decks are just gonna run a Magnamut. We can see that with the 1 Magnamut copy in Voiceless Voice, which is half dragons. We can see that with decks, of course, like Dragon Link, but also decks like Branded. And I think the card just generates so much advantage. I think, going into a Seals, the Link 2 Erratic Seals, bouncing a card, summoning Magnamut so you get any dragon from your deck in the next turn, and I didn't even mention Tenpai Dragon, super toxic. I think Magnamut could go. The other Bystials could remain at 3 because they are a fair 1-for-1 most of the time. Now let's mix it up a little bit. I think that one of the tier limits names could go to 2. It might need to be Merly specifically, because I think opening a Sheeran is really strong. Hagness can let you play on your opponent's turn. Maybe that's a cool thing. I think you could experiment with one of the names coming back to 2. Without Kid Klaus and without the Shufflers, I think the deck is perfectly fine. It's not showing a ton of success, maybe on a regional level. So give us a little bit of tier. People miss tier. This could be a crowd pleaser. Chicken Game. Go to 3. I think the card is really cool. Nobody's using it pretty much. And since nobody's using it, then people don't really think it's valuable to play it. Give striker players some juice. Skill Drain. One of the biggest problems of this format, to be honest, there's no other Floodgates because all of them are limited or banned. So people just went back to playing Skill Drain at 3. Limit that as well. I think it is probably the least toxic of them all. You could chain it to an effect and that negates, but there are other ways to play around it as well. Less with Linkaribo gone, so maybe you bring back Linkaribo and you let some level 1 decks play under it. Branded can also play under it pretty well, sending Shaddoll Dragon from the deck with Branded Fusion to destroy it. It's way less toxic in my opinion, but it still just shouldn't be a thing. If there's a philosophy of limiting and banning Floodgates, this should be on the list. And another one is Rivalry of Warlords. I think there can be only one. It's like okay, I suppose. Goes in match can also work. but to be honest, Rivalry seems like the most degenerate out of them all. I think locking you into a type, because in terms of attributes, usually your entire deck will have some sort of combination of the same attributes, right? Snake Eyes, Branded, Tear, stuff like that. So like they have a lot in common, Tenpine, stuff like that. But Rivalry specifically, in terms of types, engines are usually comprised out of different types, and it makes it really, really hard to play. Even at 1, it is extremely toxic. I think it should go to 0. Crossout Designator is weird. I don't think it's good card design. You create hand traps and other cards that can be activated during your opponent's turn, but then you also print Crossout that can negate every single one of them as long as you're playing it. It's mostly used for hand traps, but we saw in the last YCS that it was actually used to stop skill drain because that can negate it until the end of the turn as well. So, Crossout Designator currently in the OCG is at 1, and the reason why it's at 1 is probably because of Max C. They want Max C to have power, but Call by the Grave is actually at 2 there. I think semi-limiting Crossout Designator to begin with might discourage people from playing it, and another card that I think should be discouraged from people playing it is Dimension Shifter. This is the last card on my list today. Everybody wished that this card will be banned. I think it could happen one day, but I think it's such a strong cornerstone for decks that just need everything banished. For example, Ritual Beast really, improves when things are just going to the banish zone instead. Kashira as well. Under Shifter, the deck could perform a lot better. So, that's probably the reason why this card is still legal, but I would say that semi-limiting Shifter, or at least limiting Shifter, could really persuade people to just not play it because it might not be consistent enough to run, and once your graveyard has a card in it, it doesn't work anymore. I do think that it should definitely 100% be banned. I'm just not sure it's realistic to predict that. So these were my takes to kind of solve and adjust the format a little bit. I think if these happen, or at least 60% of them, we're in for a pretty good national season. So I would like to hear from you guys in the comments below. What do you think about all of these? I think it's fair to assume that some of these will for sure happen during the next Forbidden and Limited list. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, subscribe. I will see you in the next one. Peace out.